So as a follow-up question to that, thank you all for your answers there. I think the crowd appreciates what you've had to say. Is House Bill 17 and Senate Bill, I guess it's 1085, are those both the bills that were brought forth by Mr. Ripley that would allow for the abortion of preborn children who were the result of rape or incest? And any money you can answer.
You're really going to have to speak up if you're using the mic. No one can hear you back here.
You're not talking about me, are you?
You're the only one we can hear.
Thank you. Thank you. We need that input.
Or turn the volume up or something.
Talk to that guy up there. Not up there, but back there. All right, who's willing to step forward and talk about those, either one of those bills, senators or representatives? You gonna go for it, Vito?
He doesn't want a hot mic in case he says, "Am I over here?" I think, okay, I have to start with a premise from my perspective that the Supreme Court cannot be the last arbiter of what is constitutional. This may sound a little far afield, but the idea that Idaho stand on its sovereignty has not been a reality since I started way back when in 2000, my nullification bill in 2011 could not get the state to stand up for its sovereignty. So many of the individuals in the legislature believe that the Supreme Court, once it is spoken, it is not an opinion, it is law. Now, I don't know what can be done. First of all, you got to recognize Boise is occupied territory. And you know, if you're going to do anything, it's got to be with subterfuge. I don't know. But here's the thing. If you're going to get a pro-life bill through the legislature and signed by the governor, it's going to have those exceptions in it. So we've had bills in the past that don't have those sections, those exceptions in it, and the bill will be put in the drawer. It will not be heard. It will, and of course, we'll have the consternation we had last year. We'll have this consternation. We'll have these concerns. So whether, and I don't know, I haven't necessarily read these bills, but I'm sure that they probably have the exception in them because we keep trying to narrow down the legality of killing babies. We keep trying to narrow it down. But in so doing, these exceptions are part of the process. I get it, but it's a political reality. It's not going anywhere until we change leadership, until we change hearts and minds, and we went through again, you know, so much of that last year. So I'm just suggesting, and I'm assuming, I haven't read these bills, but I'm assuming that those exceptions are in there. But at the same time, if it narrows the scope of those that are able to abort, it's hard not to support it. It's hard not to support a bill that is pro-life, whether it has the exceptions or not. That's the reality.
And just to add to that, for one thing, the question was about two specific bills, and for everyone's information here, we don't all see all these bills. These bills go through various committees. Our plate is very full down there, so usually we deal with the bills we see in our committees until they get to the floor. Then we all look at them to make sure that what we're voting on, because we all vote on the bills. So I'm not actually familiar with those two bills. I really don't know what's in them. I can guess, and there is a thing called political reality down there. But I will say, I think this goes to a much bigger problem in this nation, and I attend this church, and our pastor, everybody knows Pastor Tim, obviously, because nobody raised their hand, but he talks about this. We make it very clear that this nation will be judged by the God that created us if we don't stand up for the unborn. He's very clear about what we need to do, our responsibilities as citizens and Christians. And the church has dropped the ball. The churches are silent. And so the churches need to really hit this issue and educate the people in Canada. So I'll just say that this whole panel up here is solidly pro-life. Yeah, it's working. This whole panel is solidly pro-life. We do support life every opportunity we get. One of the hardest votes I've one of the hardest votes I've ever taken down there, and we take a lot of votes every year. We see at least 500 bills, which is a lot to cover. But the hardest vote I've ever taken, we passed a bill, and it was RU 486, basically. And what the bill said was that women who wanted to abort could not get RU 486 on the internet, that they would have to at least see a doctor to do that. No, just should be no controversy bill. It makes perfect sense to me. We passed it. That bill was taken to court in Twin Falls. Judge Windmill, who was appointed, I believe, by Clinton, and does exactly what he's supposed to do down there. Basically, negate anything that the Idaho legislature does that's any good. And he ruled against us and said that if we pulled back the bill, they wouldn't allow legal fees to Planned Parenthood and everything who brought the bill, or we would be ruled against. So we voted to repeal that bill. All the pro-life groups said it was the right thing to do because we would live to fight another day. But the reality is, my wife has trouble with bladder infections. She has to see a doctor to get a prescription, even though everybody knows what it is. And so we're going to allow abortion on the internet. And so that's the reality we're dealing with down there. That's the legal system we're dealing with. And we all need to stand up about that, because judges can be impeached. They need to be impeached. And judicial activists have taken over this country. The legislative body, here's your legislators, we're the closest to the people. And yet, we're being negated. Part of it's our own fault, because we allowed executive agencies to take over, and we've allowed the courts to take over. We do have the power of the purse, and hopefully we'll start to use that a little more, because we can defund things. And so there are things we need to do.
And pardon that HIPAA violation.
Are we all? All right.
If you've got input,
Absolutely.
please do.
One of the things, as Representative Mendive mentioned, the sheer volume of bills that come through in any given year should give everyone hope that even if something comes through that isn't what you want to see, isn't what we want to see as far as the limitations for these things, if it's a step in the right direction, if we can save one life from passing that bill, we go back and change these same bills, we create new bills year after year. So just because one comes through that doesn't get the whole hog, that doesn't mean that it should be not supported by those of us that want to save a life. Even if one life can be saved by the new restrictions that are put on by this, then there is a level of support for consideration that should go into that, because it doesn't stop us from saying we're going to keep pushing for the next win and the next win and the next win until we get the job completely done. So we need to keep that in mind. We try to keep that in mind as legislators, that you can't necessarily do everything in one fell swoop. But if you can get little wins and you can start to stack up those little wins, then we can get to the place where we all want to see that law. And we can do it through that incremental change, if that's the only thing that we can get through on a day. I'd rather see a small, positive, incremental change than no change, because it didn't go far enough for us.
I think the point has been explained well by the first three, but I just will tell you about a bill that was just passed out of Senate State Affairs, and it is also what is called a trigger bill. Representative Mendive just mentioned a trigger bill that someone mentioned a trigger bill that we had. Oh, excuse me, Paul, I'm sorry.
She's just attributing things.
You're just so fascinating, all of you, that I get it all mixed up. The trigger bill we had for Roe versus Wade, if there came a circumstance that Roe versus Wade was overturned, which we had hoped would happen during the Trump administration, then Idaho already had a law in the books that would trigger that Idaho would have sovereignty in making this decision. instantly, as soon as that happened. It wouldn't have to go through the legislative process or any of that. There's another trigger bill now that just came out of the Senate State Affairs Committee, and it's a heartbeat bill. It's not the whole gamut that everyone here would like to see, but it's a little step in the right direction. And the heartbeat bill, as you can imagine, there are other states that have this. It's a trigger bill, and it says that if a woman goes in to get an abortion, they must test for a heartbeat. If they find the heartbeat, and modern equipment finds the heartbeat very early now, then they may not do the abortion. That is...
Mary, a quick follow-up though, Mary, does that also include women who have had, they are pregnant as a result of rape or incest?
You know, Don, I'm not on that committee and I haven't read the text of the
Okay.
bill, but it is at least a step in the right direction.
Yeah, Peter, those babies are not protected?
Those exceptions are excluded from that, not allowing those abortions.
Thank you.
Excuse me, before we go any further, I want to point out something. Some of the pro-life community in Boise is concerned about the heartbeat bill because we've already passed a bill saying that life begins at conception. And the confusion that the courts would take for a later passed bill saying life is only protected with the heartbeat. So now you can see the confusion that we have in the pro-life community. There are pro-life people down there that don't want to see that because it confuses when life begins. And this is just to point out that yes, we want to support them, but at the same time we don't want to confuse the matter if the courts are going to be looking at this. Well, are they protected at conception or are they protected at heartbeat? And this is part of the issue that, you know, interplays in this issue. Thanks for that. Sorry for the digression.
Vito, I think that the bill does address that directly and say that this does not establish that life begins at a heartbeat, that life begins at the conception, but a heartbeat is the way that is technologically the easiest to establish during this kind of process of an abortion.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of talk about battles. Slavery was legal in this country for roughly 70 years. And that great tragedy was only ended with a civil war. I think for us to expect that we can solve this battle easily when we've now lived close to 50 years with abortion being legal is a dream. It's going to be a battle. We're going to have to be willing to fight, and we're going to have to be able to take different victories. Civil War wasn't won at Gettysburg, but it was an important battle in the effort to win the war. And we have to approach this the same way. We have to take the victories that we can and continue to fight for the ultimate goal of making abortion in this country illegal.
I don't have too much to add to any of that. I haven't seen the bills, but if they seem to advance the ball, I'll vote for them. If we could save one life, it's worth the effort. And that's about all I have to say about it.
I've got 10 pages of bills that have been introduced into the House and Senate right now. There's about 300 bills. I am not familiar with the details of these particular bills, so I can't make full comment on them. But what I'd like to say is we don't have an issue of law, we have an issue of the heart. Okay, and we need to make sure that we as citizens have the proper heart. And then the next step is to make sure that we are properly represented both at the state and especially at the federal level. And it's at the federal level where we approve of Supreme Court nominees. And that may be the only way that we get this changed is from the top down. The bottom up has not been working very well. But we need to make sure that we understand our responsibility as citizens. It seems to me that when times are good, we tend to be complacent with the world and our representatives. Things are coasting along. Now that we've seen a regime change in effect, we're in big trouble. And we need to really dig in and restart the process. And it starts with every one of us. As Ronald Reagan said, all politics is local, right? So we have to do our duty.
Lots of good points already been made, so I don't want to repeat anything, but any legislation that, as Peter mentioned, moves the ball forward, I think is great if we can even save one life. So haven't looked at either of the two bills that were mentioned. I don't serve on those committees, but if they do make it out of committee, I'm certainly willing to look at them and try to advance them forward.